Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here with you. As many of you know, I have a passion for ministerial spouses, and I've been writing for the General Conference magazine for spouses for about 3 decades, actually. So it's been quite a while, and I'm very happy to be here. And tonight I'm going to be talking about finding our unique mission, because when we find our little niche, the thing that really we're kind of made for, that uses our gifts and our talents and the things that God has given us, and we find a way to use that, it brings us so much joy. And often our unique mission is not something we might have thought about or other people might do. It's just special to us. And so I will share about finding our unique mission and tell you some stories about women who have done some really interesting things, quite small things, simple things that maybe you could do. I'm also an introvert, so often when I hear the word mission, as I was younger, it would sort of strike fear into my heart. Oh, I have to go and talk to people I don't know. But actually, we don't have to do that. There is other things that we can do. So that was encouraging to me. So I hope that you find a blessing too in what I share tonight. So Matthew 5:14 in the Message Bible, Jesus tells his disciples something about mission, and he tells them, "You are here in this world to be light, to bring out the God colors in the world." That's what Eugene Peterson says, and I really like that idea that we're light, to show up where God is working in the world, to help people see what God is like and see how much he loves them. So we're here to be light. And then Jesus says, "Now that I put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Be generous with your lives by opening up to others. You will prompt people to open up with God, their generous Father in heaven." So we are showing people what God's love is like in our lives, even if we don't speak to them. They see us, they see the way that we respond, they see how we care, and they see our generosity. And that amazes people in a world where people are hoarding and gathering everything they want for themselves. When they see generosity of spirit or generosity with material things, then it inspires people and helps them to see just how abundantly generous God is. And our relationship with Jesus is the source of this light. So when we know Jesus and we're growing in our relationship with him and we're looking for where he's at work all around us and looking for the ways that he is loving us every day, that fills our hearts up with love, which lights us up to share God's love with the world. Ellen White says this: "The followers of Christ are to go forth on their mission, diffusing the light of heaven on those who are in darkness." So we take little lanterns, imagine they're filled with light from heaven, light from God's heart, God's love, and we carry it with us into this dark world so people can look and see there is light, look and see a little piece of heaven in the way that we live our lives and relate to them. The life of Christ in the soul, his love revealed in the character, makes them the light of the world. So just filling our hearts with God's love and sharing it any way we can is the way that we can show how Christ was missional in the world, because that's what he did. His heart was filled up with God, and it just overflowed onto the lives of people around them. A few years ago, when it was New Year, about this time of year, I was thinking, what do I want for this year? I'm not going to make a New Year's resolution, but I thought something that I would like is that my picture of God is continually expanded. My picture of his love, my understanding of his character keeps on growing bigger and bigger. And when I looked at that, when I explored that in my life, that really made a difference to me. And my experience of his love, my understanding of it has just grown and grown. And Ellen White says that continues growing through all of eternity. It never stops. So when we start now, we're doing the work of eternity, like right where we are. And the more my heart is filled up with his love, the more it kind of bubbles out of me into those around me. And we are light people. And this recently I found a light person on Amazon, and it's a lovely little light. It's about €4, and it's a bendy person. This person can even pray and put their hands together and kneel. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun if, I could give all of you one of these little people, and I wonder how you would bend it and where you would put it to remind you to be a light person in the world and to share God's love. I think I would put a heart on the chest there, maybe a smile on the face or something, and put this where it will remind me every day to be a light person. How are you a light person? And what difference does light make? Because when we don't have light, actually, the world is a colorless place. At night, we don't really see color, and we just see the light and the dark, and it's not so beautiful, is it? But when there is light, light brings out the colors in the world. As Eugene Peterson says, the light of when we're missional, our light shows light onto God and brings out the God colors in the world around us. And as we relate to people in ways that God would relate to them, they see that light. Something that I try to do, and this is probably my little bit of being light in the world, is whenever I'm having a conversation with someone or I meet someone, and maybe even the person at the checkout in the grocery store, I think, how can I leave them a little happier, a little more blessed, a little more loved, a little more appreciated than when I found them? So in every conversation, every interaction, think, how can I leave a person feeling happier, more loved, more peaceful, more thanked and appreciated? And just by doing that, it changes the conversations, the interactions I have. And I hope that that little bit is a little bit of bringing out the God's colors in the world. So there's all kind of lights that we have in this world. Some of them help us to stay safe, traffic lights, road crossing lights, to find our way, street lights, to see when the power is on our machines, to notice when something needs fixing and a warning light is flashing. Lights also help us to celebrate together and when we have a party. So lights can be all different kinds of lights, and we can be different kinds of lights at different times to keep people safe, to show them the way, to show God's power flowing through us, to light up what needs to be mended and healed, and to celebrate together. So being light is helping people to see God's loving character and his values when they encounter us. They might just think, that's what God is like, or I see something different there, even if they don't think about God, or they see the care that we have and it makes them stop and think because they don't always encounter that. So how do you help people to see the God colors in the world and the different aspects of God's loving character? So how are we already being lights in the world? Just think about this for yourself. How can you help people to see the many colors of God's love in the world around them? How can we be lights that are protective, guiding, and helpful? One family that I know, whenever they meet for dinner, even with their small children in the evening, they say, where did you see God's love today? And they talk about it. And as they talk about it, it inspires them. And the great thing is that now the children, every day, whatever they're doing, they're thinking, where am I seeing God's love today? So I can tell mum and dad at dinner time. And it changes their perspective on everything because they're looking for where God is loving them. And that is such a lovely thing for us to do, to look for where God is loving us so that love can inspire us and we can share it with others. There's also salty people. So I have the salt pots we have on our table at home are like the people on the PowerPoint picture, and they're salty people. They're filled with salt, and they hug, they share love in the world. So we're here to be salt seasoning, says Eugene Peterson, in his paraphrase of Jesus, to bring out the God flavors of the earth. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? Then you've lost your usefulness, and you're just good for the rubbish heap. So how can we be salty? How is being salty being different to being light? Well, light is something that people, they just see and they think, there we go. There's a little tiny insight, even if they don't realize it, into who God is and his character. And so that's seeing us, seeing how we behave. But salt is about helping people to experience, not just see what we do, but somehow in our interaction with them, to help them experience God's love and his character for themselves in their interaction that we have. So they taste it, they experience it, and they go, wow, that's what God's love is like as an experience, not just to be seen. And salt, you know, it takes sensitivity to add just the right amount of salt, and it doesn't take a lot to make a difference. And that's something amazing with God's love. When we share his love, often doesn't take very much for people to stop and think, that's different. That person is different. I wonder why they're different. I wonder why I feel peaceful in their presence. Or I wonder why when I'm with them, I feel so loved. And this helps them to start thinking. So salt is about mingling, as Ellen White also told us, mingling with people so they can taste the goodness, that they can experience the love through us. And salt changes whatever it's mixed with. And how can we change the world around us? So think for yourself, how can we be salt in this world and bring out the God flavors? And how can we be salty preservatives, antiseptics, flavor enhancers, ice melters, and cleansers? Because salt can do all of these different things, but it has to mingle to do any of these things. So Christ's method is mingling. There is need of coming close to the people by personal effort. If less time are given to sermonizing, more time spent in personal ministry, greater results will be seen. She says the poor are to be relieved, so sharing things with those who are poor, helping the sick, comforting those who are sad, and instructing those who need to be taught, and counseling the inexperienced. So everything we do that helps people to feel loved, to feel compassion, to feel that we are doing something that makes their life a little bit better is when we're mingling, when we're sharing God's love. So it's that relieving their suffering and when we mingle that is so important, and it's really vital. So we are to weep with those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice, because when we do this, accompanied by the power of persuasion and prayer and the power of the love of God, this work cannot be without fruit. So when we mingle, when we get to know people's lives, and even if it's only just one or two people, maybe we're shy, we're introvert like me, and the thought of mingling with lots of people is very daunting. But if we can just mingle with one person or just bless each person we encounter, we make a huge difference in this world. So I wonder, how has someone helped you to taste the God flavors in the world by experiencing God's love? Can you think of a time when someone did that for you? And when I think about the times when someone showed me God's love, quite often it was a very small thing, but it was like they had thought about me and what I needed, and they'd relieved my suffering or did something that was just right for what I needed. And that thoughtfulness and the action and the love really warmed my heart. And I remember it to this day. When I think about those times, it's really encouraging. So we are light when we help people to see God's character through the way we live out our values. And we're salt when we mingle with them, and they really feel God's love through our friendship and our care and our compassion. And then we had the story of the sheep and the goats, which is very familiar to us. And here we see that we can share God's love by feeding the hungry. Our church has a food bank, and different supermarkets give us the food that's running out on that day. And we get so much now. And every Friday night, people come to our church and we give them food to take away. And they sit there and have a warm drink. And hopefully one day we'll be able to give them a dinner as well and find someone to talk to so they're not alone. And it's such a blessing having just the aspect in our church, and the different church members do different parts of setting up and collecting the food so that they can all be involved in that mission. We can give clothes to those who need them. Even if we give it to a charity shop, we're helping those who can only afford to buy clothes there. We can visit people who are sick or find other ways to encourage them. And maybe send them little love packages or flowers or something. So we don't actually have to go and visit them, and maybe it's not appropriate to go and visit them, but we can let them know we care in gentle and creative ways. Support those who are struggling. Who do you know that's finding life tough right now? And what could you do if you went to say, you know, I've got 1 hour to help you. What can I do that would be most helpful? And I will do anything. And then just do what they ask you, because so many people are struggling. And loneliness is a huge thing in our society. And many churches are doing projects that reach the lonely, because being alone and lonely is as bad for your health as if you smoked 15 cigarettes a day, and it can take a decade off your life living alone. And so some churches are finding creative ways to befriend the lonely by having drop-in coffee times or decaf times, afternoon teas, games, times people can come and play board games together or do crafts together. So there's a place they can come and interact without spending any money. Give dignity to those who feel shamed, maybe visit those in prison, care for the homeless, the displaced. And even if you can do something simple, even if it's just once a month, we can find a little mission that is just right for us and just fits the time we have. And doing it, even in small bits, is something that's a blessing for us and for others. So in order to be sheep that do the caring, we need to know the shepherd. And the more that we are expanding our picture of his love for us, the more it will expand our picture of his love for everybody else, because he loves everyone else, whoever they are, whatever they've done, just as much as he loves us. And that's amazing. So once we experience his loving care for us and go where he leads, he will show us, he will say, do this for this person, or try this, or do that. And we find that he works in our life to help us find our own unique mission, or just invite us into different places, to different encounters when we're open to him, where we can share his love. And maybe that's what's right for you, just to be listening to God saying, hey, that person needs a smile or a hug, or why not pay for their drink, the person behind you in the line, or just start a conversation with someone at the bus stop. Sometimes that can be the way that we are light and salt in the world. And it doesn't need a big project or something that's going to change our lives. It can be just a different, simple way of looking at the world around us. So people need friendship, smiles, comfort, affection, encouragement, respect, help, gratitude, and just saying thank you to people can be amazing. And to realize that every time we say or do something kind to someone else, we're showing God's love to them, and we are being light and salt and missional. So Anna, as a pastor's wife, and they moved into a community, and they had just a very small street around them. And they thought, how can we as a family make this street a mission field? And so they decided that they were going to do things with their children. They were a little bit bigger than this. This is not Anna. And they were going to visit every house in their little street, 20 houses, once a month, and just do something for the people there. And this was quite amazing. So they involved the whole family in praying for the neighbors, and they talked to them as often as they could and looked for ways that they could help them. And so what they used to do would go every month with the children. They'd sing a little song. Daddy played the guitar. He was a pastor. And they would sing a little song to people, maybe just one verse on their doorstep. And then they'd give them something. Like, so when it was February, they might give them some heart-shaped cookie. So something very small, or maybe a chocolate, or maybe a little tiny bunch of flowers, or something like that. Maybe they would make jam together or share what they'd grown in their garden. So or made a card. So they just made something every month, 20 of them, and they would go and sing a song, chat to them, give them a little gift, and then go to the next place. And it soon came that people looked forward to these little family visits. They started to interact with them. They got to know them. And then Anna and her husband would invite people to their house one at a time to get to know them and just have a drink and a cake. And then as they got to chat to them and they found that they were a pastor, they would ask spiritual questions. And eventually they started a little Bible study group in their house. And they also had like a little Bible story time for the children in the street, where they could come and have a little story and do a craft and have a snack together, maybe once a month as well. And so they could get to know the children. And they just did this very simple thing in their street, and it actually really helped them to grow a really positive community of caring in that street. So what Anna learned was that if you have children, they can help to break down barriers and open up doors. But if you don't, you can still go along and introduce yourself and maybe, say, I've got this extra food, or I made these cookies for you, and just say hello and get to know the people. We now have a WhatsApp for our whole street that my husband set up. Again, there's about 20 houses in our street. And people can say on there, I've lost my cat, or I need some help with this, or does anyone have a ladder? Or my tree is blown down, now what do we do? And everyone helps one another, because on the WhatsApp, they can quickly put a message and they can feel okay about that. And we're soon going to have a time when everyone can come to our house and meet one another. And some people in the street have lived here ever since the houses were built. So it's an interesting community. So Anna learned that when you invite people into your home as well, let them see you doing family life, and they can see you're just normal people and you're relaxed and your house doesn't have to be perfect. They love it and they feel so welcome, and they love the hospitality. And often just being friends with them, you don't have to pray with them or preach to them or tell them anything. When they know what you do and they know that you're loving and kind, quite often they will open up their hearts to you, and you'll be able to share in the way that God leads you to. So they learned that their home is like a church too, and it can be a safe place for people to come and ask questions, and then eventually start a small group. So this is what they did, and it worked for them. Might not work for you, but it's just one simple way that they found they could connect with the people right in their street that often we just forget to reach out to. So they had this messy church for the children as well. And also at the church, they decided to have a social event once a quarter that had no spiritual content. So more often people come into the church for social, the easier it is for them to come into the church for something else. So they just did fun things that people could do, particularly people who were lonely or didn't have much money. They could come along to like an ice cream party, or maybe watch a movie together, or have a games night, or do some crafts, or go for a walk together. So they planned social events that anyone could just invite their friends to, and there would be no spiritual content. It was just a time to show love to people, and they found that was really helpful too. I'm just going to show a little video called The Florist, which shows that whatever we're doing, whatever our work is, doesn't matter. We don't have to be a pastor to share God's love. God uses us right where we are, whatever we're doing. And this is a lovely inspirational video to show how a florist can be a way that God works in the community.
I'm just a florist. Got a small shop. Nothing special. Silly way to spend your life, I guess. Fussing with a bunch of flowers. Sometimes I wish I was good at something else. I don't know, a doctor or a missionary. Someone who really helps people. But I do love flowers. Always had a knack for it. So I do my best to make them beautiful for people. But I know flowers can't change the world. I know I don't make much of a difference. I'm just a florist. I'm just a florist.
So I love that because it just shows how whatever we're doing, when it's infused with love, we can make a difference. So whatever is your gift, whatever you're already doing, you are very likely to be a missionary when you let God's love work through you. And we do our very best wherever we are. Every person, every family is different, and every person or family, if you have a family as well, can discover a unique mission, because if you have still have children at home, it's fun to involve them in a little tiny mission project that you all enjoy doing together. It's fun. It's actually really good for us and good for them to be part of making a difference in the world and helping other people. One of the best ways to actually that helps sadness and anxiety in the world today is to do something kind for someone else, because when we relieve someone else's suffering, it always makes us feel good and them feel good too. And it's God's way of healing us actually in this broken world, when we can be part of relieving other people's suffering through compassion. So it's really good for us, good for our children to find these simple things that we can do, whether it's just making a batch of cookies once a month and saying, who can we give the cookies to? Maybe the people in our street. Maybe we'll go to the police station and bless the policemen and say thank you for looking after us and give them cookies. Maybe we'll take them to a senior home, or the shut-ins in our church that can't come to church anymore. Whatever it is that you love to do that is your gift, like maybe even making flowers and growing them and making beautiful flower bunches, is something that you can use for your mission to share God's love. I will put something in the chat when I finish speaking, which is like just a simple worksheet where you can gather together your different resources, your skills, your gifts, and look at them and think, is there a theme here? Is there something that when I look at all that God has given me in different ways, something that brings them together in a special mission? So we all have different resources, and we may not have much money or much time, but there are still things we can do with a very little time and money. What are your personal resources, your professional skills, your training, the time that you have available, your finances? And there are things that we can do for no cost at all. If you have children at home, what are their ages? What do they love to do? How can we use that as well? And your home is a place where you can invite people and share hospitality. And I remember one of the most amazing pieces of hospitality was when a family where we preached at a church in a distant place said, come back and have lunch with us. And we got to their home and they'd been busy and they hadn't had time really to clean and tidy. And they just opened soup and bread. And you know what? That was just so precious that they said, it doesn't matter about how things look. What matters is that we care for you. And that was so deeply special. I remember it more than any other fancy meal I've had anywhere, is just going to that simple home where they felt there was nothing to stop them sharing their love with us. What are your practical skills? Maybe it's cooking and hospitality. Maybe it's gardening. Maybe you grow vegetables to share. Maybe you're good at things on the computer and you can help people who are stuck. Maybe you have special practical skills. Just this week, my husband was trying to fix a radiator in her house and didn't have the right tools. And I said, why don't you put something on the WhatsApp for church? And within half an hour, someone from church came round with all the tools and all the expertise and helped him. And that was such a gift. Maybe you can sew or do crafts. Maybe you sing and do music. And whatever it is your gift, your skill, you can use it in some way to bring joy to others. What are your spiritual gifts? Encouragement, generosity, leadership, mercy, service, teaching, administration, discernment, helping others, knowledge, wisdom, faith, healing. There's so many spiritual gifts, and we all have at least one of them. And if you're not sure what they are, you can usually find a questionnaire on the internet that you can fill out to highlight what yours might be. But how wonderful to know that just encouraging someone is a spiritual gift. We so much need encouragement, or just being kind and showing mercy, or just serving someone in some way. I once in one church I said to Bernie, I think I have a spiritual gift of gap filling, because I was often called on to fill in a gap. I was away a lot with my work, and so I couldn't really take on a position, but I could fill gaps. So whenever there was a gap and I was around, I would fill it. So I said there should be a spiritual gift of gap filling, but I think it's probably a spiritual gift of helping or service or mercy, where you fill in the gap and do whatever needs to be done. And it's so important. I mean, Jesus was a gap filler too, and there's nothing wrong with just filling in the gaps and just saying what's needed this week and doing it. That can be a mission too. What are your passions and your interests? Maybe you care deeply about homelessness or children and families or older people or refugees or literacy or injustice or healthy lifestyles. So think about what your passions are and what you care about in the community, because God has put these things in your heart, this passion, this interest, for a reason. And how can you use your gift, your skills to meet a specific small thing in your community? And it might not be very big, and it may just be once a month, but you make a difference when you do that in that small way. I'm going to tell you about some friends of mine. They're all pastors' wives who did different things, and they found their own little way to bless their communities. So one pastor's wife, she lived in a small town and she was new there. And when she was finding a house there, she got to know the one and only house selling agency in the little town. There was only one. And so she got to know the lady who ran this, and they made good friends, and she invited her around for a meal sometime, and they got talking. And Rosemary decided that she was going to welcome other new people to the town. So every time anyone new came to the town, the estate agent would tell her, someone new is moving into this house on this day. And the next day, Rosemary would go around with a welcome basket. It had flowers in it. She baked a cake in a tin. She brought some leaflets in around about the town and where things are. And she said, "We just want to welcome you to this little town. And here's some flowers. And I made a cake because I know, there's never time to cook when you move into a new house. But don't feel you have to eat it straight away. I'll come back in a week's time to collect the tin." And this was intentional. So she had a tin and it had welcome written on it, I think. And so she would go back a week later to collect the tin. So it gave her reason to go back and visit them again, and they were less busy. And then she would say, come round to my house and come and have a cup of tea and a cake. And if you've got any questions about this little town, then, we'll try and find them out together, because I'm new too. And that way she made a whole lot of friends. She had a massive amount of friends and people and contacts. And then she would run family ministry seminars, marriage seminars in a local restaurant, actually, that provided a meal. And she had all these people she could invite because she'd welcome them to the town. Another pastor's wife and her husband started a gratitude club in their little town. They lived in a town where there many people were depressed and had mental health issues, and they decided they were going to find out who needed to be thanked in their town and then thank them. So they even asked people, they went out with a clipboard in the town and said, who is doing something amazing in this town that we can thank? And several of them said, you should thank this bus driver. He's so kind, he's slow, he helps the people who find it difficult to get on the bus, he helps them on, and he doesn't mind going slowly and carefully for them. And but we really appreciate how he cares. So they found out when his bus was going to come by, and he was the driver, and they made a big certificate that said, "You've been thanked by this community for your careful and kind bus driving." And they gave him a big badge that said, "I've been thanked," and they gave him a box of chocolates. And he burst into tears on the bus and said, "I've never been given a certificate for anything. This is the first time." And everyone on the bus cheered, and it really helped the whole community. And they would share the news about how they thanked people in the newspaper, and that would be a little story. So this was one church's ministry, this gratitude club, where they would thank people who did good service in the community. Obviously, many churches will make bread and soup and feed the homeless. And in some places, they just need someone to help make the soup once a month, or make one pot of soup with other people, or several different kinds. And so it's a small thing. And if you have children, they can get involved, cutting up the vegetables and helping to make the soup, and feel part of that, because that gives them a good feeling in their heart when they help others. In one place we went to, there was a retired pastor's wife who loved to sew. And she heard about the Women's Refuge, where women went who were abused. and how they didn't really have very much, and they were often put in not very nice houses once they left there. And she decided she wanted to make beautiful quilts for these ladies, and that they were big enough to go over a double bed, but they could throw them over a sofa if they had a shabby sofa, put them on their bed to brighten their room, lay them on the floor for their children to play on if the floor wasn't very nice. And so actually we as a church, the women in the church, got together one Sunday a month, and we thought, what are we going to do? We have no fabric for this project. And so the lady in charge, she went to a big curtain shop in the town, and they said, we're so glad you've come. We've taken all of our curtain samples. They were like, I guess, a meter of curtain all around the wall of the shop, so you could look at all the different colors. They said, we're just changing these. You can have all this fabric for nothing. And then one lady would cut big shapes out of these beautiful fabrics and arrange them in harmonious colors, and we'd stitch them together and put a backing on them. And we put on the back, this has been made especially for you by Hearts and Hands, a caring ministry of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And the women in the refuge looked forward to when they left, and they could choose whichever quilt they wanted to take with them. And it was such a blessing for them that we did that there. And we never ran out of fabric. There was always, whenever we thought there's not enough fabric anymore, another shop would close down, or we'd get another donation of curtain samples to keep us going. And that has been running, I've been gone there for 8 years now. So it must have been running about 12, 15 years, this ministry. And it's such a blessing, and it doesn't cost anything. Another pastor's wife, when it was her birthday and she was about 30, she had this amazing idea that on her birthday, she would do 30 acts of kindness, one for each year of her life. And so she did things like buy 6 bunches of flowers. So that was 6 acts of kindness to take to an old people's home. They made cookies for the policeman with her children. They made a list of 30 things they could do in one day to show kindness, and they just did them together. And the lady took her small children, 6 and 8, with her on this whole day of doing these kind things. And the children loved it. And then when they came back, her 8-year-old said, she's about to be 8, said, I'm going to be 8 in a couple of months, and I want to do this on my birthday too. Can I start planning my 8 acts of kindness now? And so that's what the children do. Every time it's their birthday, they plan 8 acts of kindness and do them with their mum and their dad too, if he's around. So I'm over 60 now, so that'd be rather a lot to do in one day. So I might have to halve it and do 30 instead. But it's a simple thing that you can do once a year and be a blessing. And it's amazing how that also inspired the children as well. And remember special events. So keep it. If someone says, oh, it's my birthday next week, or I've got a wedding anniversary, and you're talking to them, think, what can I do to remember that and do something special? Many years ago, when we were actually at Andrews in the seminary, I had a birthday, and it had followed a really sad, tragic event where we'd been bereaved. And we felt very lonely out there in America, a long way from everybody. And we were in a small community, and no one had very much money. They were all like student pastors' wives and seminary wives. And I came home from a little job that I had, and my husband and all the other men were out doing some evangelism in the evening. So it was very lonely. And on my doorstep, someone had put a little donut with a candle in it. And I've never forgotten that. That was a long time ago now, about 40 years ago. And yet this stays in my heart, this gift of a person putting a donut on my doorstep with a little candle in it, and how precious that was. And I've had many wonderful presents from my family, many amazing things, but I will never forget that simple little donut. And never forget that when you do small things, it can make a massive difference to people's lives. Often when people talk about something kind someone did for them, it wasn't very amazing. Someone paid their bus fare, someone bought them a drink, or paid the extra money that they needed when they didn't have quite enough money to pay for their food at the checkout. And yet when someone does something like that, they see God, they taste God, and that moment stays very precious in their heart. and we can be part of that. There was a village in Britain called Congresbury, and I don't even know how you pronounce that word, to be honest, but it's a little church outside Bristol, and it's an Anglican church. And this church was 800 years old. And you can see on this this poster that they've made there, there's an ark, and it says ARK, which is Acts of Random Kindness. And they decided that when they were 800 years old, they would not celebrate with a party or a choir festival or a garden party or whatever. They were going to collect 800 acts of kindness. So they made little postcards, you can see there with a little rainbow on, and they put them in the village shops, in the library, the garage. And anyone who experienced kindness wrote it on the card and posted it in a letterbox, a little cardboard box that was in the church. And on Christmas Day that year, they collected the 800th act of kindness. And this changed the whole community, because even people who weren't Christian, who weren't really involved, they would do acts of kindness to one another. It inspired them. And I looked to see what had happened with this community. And now they have a cafe in their community, which is expressly set up by the church to reduce loneliness in the village. Anyone can go there anytime and just have a drink and a cake, even if they can't pay. They pay by donation. They can sit there and play games. They can get help. There's clothes they can buy for just a very small amount of money, like secondhand clothes. If people have extra things they want to give away, they leave them there. And they've made this kindness hub in their village now, so that they are still being kind. And they were known as the kindest church in Britain and the kindest village. And I sometimes think, what would it take for people to call the Adventist Church the kindest church in the town? If we were to win an award for being the kindest church, what would we be doing differently? And how might that work? So we can also work with others. We don't have to work on our own with our mission. We can set goals and mission projects together, find someone else who shares the same passion, because it's nice not to do it alone. We can work together where possible and encourage each other, involve children so they can catch the joy as well, and celebrate when you reach your goals, and set a new goal for another celebration. So one group that we know, when they've done 30 acts of kindness, they have a big dinner together, a big party, and they invite their friends to come along, and they make plans for the next acts of kindness, and it kind of grows so that they're not doing it all on their own. So as I come to the end of this, I'm thinking, what is God inviting you and your family, if you have one, to do for him in your community? What is he laying on your heart for you to find your mission at the moment? And it doesn't have to be something big and enormous and life-changing and burdensome. It can be just doing what you love to do and just doing what is blessing someone else. And maybe you're already doing that, but you never realized that you were sharing God's love and being light and salt in just the way that you respond gently and kindly to the people around you. That is being missional. That is showing people what God is like, mingling with them, and just doing kind things is amazing. And often that can have more effect on people than, as Ellen White says, than preaching and teaching at them. Just to know that we love them. And when they ask us, how come you do this for us? Say, it's because God has filled my heart with love, and it just overflows, and I want to share it with you. So I wonder what your unique mission would be. Oh yes, and here's the trophy. Imagine that next year your church wins a competition. What will you and maybe your team or your family do to win this? And what might stop you from being the kindest church? And what could you do to overcome that? Because I just think it's so wonderful if people could know us for being the kindest church and not for some of the other reasons why they might know Adventists. And as we pause to close this, just may God bless you as you discover your unique mission and use it to share his love. I can't tell you what it is, but you can just ask God to say, how can I bless someone today? And then do what he leads you to do, and know that that is being missional. That's being light and salt in this community. And that's what Jesus did, really. He paused every day and said, God, show me what I need to do today, where I need to show your compassion and your love. And then he just did it in the most generous way he could. And we can do that too, right where we are.